Hi everyone, I'm Lorraine Driscoll, founder of Building Better Brains, and this is another episode where I talk about the root cause of why our child might be struggling with learning, reading, and behavior, and what are some solutions that reach way beyond the limitations of IEPs, medication, and endless tutoring. So I have been talking quite a bit about self-esteem, self-confidence, what to do, when your kid says those heartbreaking words, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm bad, the teacher hates me, other kids hate me. And I talked quite a bit about self-esteem and what we can do to help our children work through those really, negative self-beliefs or perceptions of themselves. And one of the things that I really want to talk about today is what is smart? What is smart? And why we need to talk to our children about what smart really means and break it down and take the mystery out of it. So I used to have a banner in my classroom that I made myself because I was so passionate about the concept that it is not how smart you are, it is how are you smart. And I can't tell you how many kids would say, what do you mean by that, miss? And every year I would start the year off where I would have children do a quiz on the multiple intelligences to find out where their intelligences were. So there was a scientist named Gardner, and he came up with this theory that there's 8 different intelligences, probably more to be honest, but and some of them might be like someone's mechanically minded, someone has amazing social intelligence, someone is very intelligent with the more academic stuff like reading and so forth. Some have amazing spatial intelligence like with mathematics. There was the naturalistic with nature. It goes on and on and on. And that was like amazing for these kids to see that. Many of them, this particular class that I had one year, were really struggling with all kinds of learning disabilities to realize, I'm way better at this than my brother who doesn't have any learning disability. And so I think it's really important to point out to kids that intelligence is just a social, cultural construct. What is smart according to what time period or culture we live in. And just for them to understand the different kinds of smart, because I hate the word smart. And I think it's important also to emphasize to kids that schools are built around testing a certain type of intelligence, right? Like we know this, like if you've read anything about the school system and so forth and why it's so hard for kids to be successful, it's because the school system is built around one type of intelligence. And it doesn't mean that nobody can be successful, but then it makes it harder for people who don't have the type of intelligence to be as successful as the ones who do. And I always pointed out to the kids that in previous times, reading was like not even important at all, right? Like you'd be considered a bookworm or wasting your day away if you were sitting around reading a novel. And that the people who were maybe athletic or really good at building stuff, who could hunt or build stuff for the community and so forth, were much more valued than what we might value in today's culture. It just depends in terms of what brings in the money today or in a particular culture that is going to be valued. And I actually read about years ago a particular group in Africa or culture in Africa where being artistic was like the highest intelligence, and everybody wanted to be, to be artistic was what they really focused on in that culture. And so, I know lots of kids who had like serious learning disabilities and were amazing artists. So that wouldn't even have been an issue to them. They'd been like the smart aleck in their group if they live in that tribe or group in Africa. And so I think the way to kind of emphasize that intelligence is a social construct is to talk about the things, and also to talk about like, Uncle Bob, who really doesn't like to read that much maybe, but can fix cars like nobody's business, or, Aunt so-and-so who, maybe never finished high school, but can run a business. Maybe she cuts hair and runs her own hair salon and it has a real way with people. I mean, we all know people who didn't even go on to post-secondary education, and it's fascinating where they've ended up. Like they've made it quite far in terms of their careers because they have an amazing social intelligence. They're able to connect with people and relate to people. They have such charisma and so forth, and that's ultimately what led to their success. Not to say they didn't have other skills, but it's really important to emphasize that we all have areas of weakness and we all have areas of strength. And unfortunately, we're not going to get it all. So my big thing is taking the mystery out of what is smart, and breaking it down and finding out what are the real ingredients. And I would always emphasize when kids would say in my classroom, yeah, but so-and-so is smart. And they would refer to like Lisa in the back, who's like always cracking off 90s or whatever. And I would say, yeah. And I would say, I do believe that she does really well in class. And then I would start pointing out to my grade 7s in one particular year, like, but what does Lisa do differently than you? And they all admitted, like, Lisa kind of busts her butt. Lisa asks all kinds of questions. Lisa, if she doesn't do something well, she goes back and redoes it, and so forth. And it's not to discount that maybe things came easier to Lisa, or that Lisa doesn't have a learning disability, or that Lisa didn't have certain privileges that maybe other kids don't have, right? There's a lot of reasons why Lisa might be successful, but Lisa does do certain things that has helped her with her success, and the same with the other kids. And I think it's really important to point out to kids, again, that whole growth mindset and sticking with it. And again, going back to the reason why certain, people in our society that we think are so amazing, and we find out they're dyslexic, and oh my God, how could they have been so successful and been dyslexic? And it's because they had that growth mindset, that stick with itness, continuing through that challenge, and so forth. And so I think of Liam Neeson. Whenever I think of smart, I think of smart is a particular set of skills. So if you've seen any of those Liam Neeson movies, I don't even remember what they're called now, where he has a daughter who goes missing. And he says, I have a particular set of skills, and so forth. Like, we could say Liam Neeson is like a really smart detective, but what does that really mean? He knows what it means. It means he has a particular set of skills that makes him really good at being able to solve mysteries. And so if we break down to kids that people who are successful have a particular set of skills or efforts or things that they do to make their success possible, even if they do have dyslexia. And that sometimes those skills have to be developed, for sure. Sometimes we don't have them. Like, sometimes we don't have very good problem solving skills, or we don't have a whole lot of patience. I know for myself, patience is something like it's a lifelong work in progress. Sometimes we don't have the grit because we don't have like the self-esteem and the understanding to stick with it, that it's not about our own failures, that this is a normal challenge. So I don't want to minimize what's going on in your child's life. I'm not in any way implying they're, just being lazy or whatever, but we want to break down smart into the real ingredient of what really that means. Like Chris Hadfield, Canadian astronaut, he wrote a book, and he talked about how he didn't do amazing in school. He was like, I think, a C+ regular B kid. But NASA actually didn't want, apparently, he said, people who are brainiacs. They want someone who was mediocre because they were the people who would be able to problem solve, to have that grit, to stick with it, and so forth. And there's more and more employers realizing that getting A+ all the way through doesn't necessarily build a whole lot of character. And again, that totally depends. It's a bit of a blanket statement, but emphasize to your kid that being, not being the smarty pants who's cracking off A+ isn't always the most important thing, that effort goes much further. And there's actually been studies that have found that B students tend to be more successful later on in life than kids who are A students, because they have to develop more of that grit and problem solving and effort and stick with it, and all these other tools that ultimately lead to success later on. So, basically that smarts, like, it's things like patience, remaining calm through frustrations, having resilience, having grit, problem solving, going back, evaluating or analyzing, how come I didn't do well? I had a girl years ago, she was so determined to pass a test and or to do well on her test, and she kept like bombing her test, but I kept helping her find ways of studying that worked for her. And finally, I think it was like halfway through the year, she got like an 80 something on her test, and she couldn't believe it, because she was like literally failing all of her tests, and she was so discouraged because she was trying. And we would go through, okay, so like, what were you doing? How did you study? Were you listening to music? Were you in a room with the TV? Were you, okay, you're a visual learner, so did you do a lot of, ways to memorize the test or what you had to learn by visual learning strategies that you were taught in class, or did you, just kind of read your notes over and didn't really use a lot of color and pictures and so forth? And by halfway through the year, we nailed it, or she nailed it in terms of figuring out what she had to do. But what I told her, I said, the most important thing out of this whole experience is not that you pass the test. Like, you're not going to remember this in 5 years, probably not even 2. But it's the study skills you've developed. You know how your brain works. You know how to memorize. You know how to learn, how you learn. And it was the grit that she stuck with it, that she kept failing the test, but she didn't see that as, I'm stupid, I should just give up on this class, I'm never going to do well in this class. She failed about 3 or 4 tests, and she just kept saying, okay, what can I do next time? So we really want to point that out to our children, that success is not like this, right? A lot of kids don't even know that. They think that it really is like this, that it's just easy, and how much of an internal struggle it is. And I'm willing to bet yourself, maybe your partner, other people in the family, whether it's grandparents or aunts or uncles, can share stories of how they had to struggle through certain things to get where they are, how it was like sometimes they wanted to give up, or they did give up for a period of time. So I think really talking about that and being explicit to kids about what is smart and what is success, to help them not feel so alone and demoralized, and to help basically ultimately increase their motivation. So I do want to say, all that said, that I truly believe, my hope is that kids aren't struggling endlessly with, whatever it is they're doing, or they're struggling with in terms of reading, learning, math, behavior, whatever the case may be. And I see so many kids, they go through my program and we address the root cause, and obviously because things are easier and they feel like, oh my God, this is like, I can get this now. It's going in because we're addressing the weak connections in the brain disorganization, the inflammation, the biochemical imbalances. And all of a sudden, it's just like amazing to see their self-confidence soar. So if you're interested in learning more about, my programs, the Full Potential Formula, or the Reading Rockstar Method, don't be shy to book a free Better Brains Breakthrough call to tell me more about what's going on with your child and how I might be able to help. Thanks for watching.